Have you ever felt like your waiting has become an invisible prison? Like the depth of your devotion is unseen, your prayers unheard, and the silence between you more painful than any spoken goodbye? Maybe the world has told you to move on, to forget, to numb the ache. But something in you still remembers, a promise, a pull, a purpose. And now, something deeper is stirring. You're not just tired of waiting, you're awakening. In today's video, we will walk with you through one of the most sacred thresholds of the divine feminine journey. The moment when she stops waiting for him and starts rising for herself. You'll understand why true love was never about self-sacrifice, why evolution can't be delayed for another soul's denial, and why the feminine must reclaim her throne before union can arrive. This isn't a story of abandonment, it's a reclamation of power, truth, and identity. By the end of this video, you won't see your waiting as weakness anymore. You'll understand it as sacred remembrance, and you'll finally feel the shift that happens when you stop longing and start becoming. You'll feel the strength in your spine, the fire in your soul, and the beauty in coming home to yourself. This is the turning point, not just in your twin flame journey, but in your entire life. So stay with us, watch until the end, because the moment you stop waiting is the moment you start rising. Type, "I'm done waiting," in the comments below to affirm your return to your throne. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if this message finds your heart. Number 1, from waiting to awakening. They may whisper that she gave up, that she grew distant, that somewhere along the way she lost her hope. But those are the words of those who never truly saw her journey. This is not a tale of abandonment, it is a story of awakening. The divine feminine did not harden out of hate, nor did she walk away out of bitterness. Instead, she walked deeper into herself, into the flame that was never his to ignite, because it had always been burning within her. She waited, not passively, but with sacred devotion. Through lifetimes of longing, karmic loops and silences that thundered louder than any spoken rejection, she held on. Not because she was naive, but because her soul remembered a promise. She waited as a woman who loved without condition, who believed in transformation, and who held space for the man she knew lived beneath the layers of avoidance, fear, and delay. But waiting, in its sacred form, eventually becomes revelation. And in the stillness of one more unanswered moment, she finally heard the truth her soul had been whispering all along. The awakening was never his responsibility. It was always hers. She was never here to pause her growth until he was ready. She was here to rise, to reclaim, and to remember. When nothing changed outside her, everything changed within her. Her heart did not close. It opened to herself. She did not stop loving him. She stopped outsourcing her light to a love that refused to meet her where she stood. And now, she is not cold. She is clear. She is not resentful. She is radiant. She is no longer angry. She is awake. Before we move forward, take a moment to breathe and ask yourself, have you mistaken waiting for love when it was really a call to awaken your own soul? Has your silence been a space of pain or the beginning of your power? If this message stirred something within you, we'd love to hear from you. Share your story in the comments below, or simply type, "I am no longer waiting, I am rising," to affirm your awakening. Your voice matters, your truth is powerful, and your presence here is no accident. Let's walk this path together. Number 2, the moment of clarity. Have you ever reached a moment when the pain doesn't shatter you, but instead simply melts away? When your tears no longer stem from heartbreak, but from the profound release of finally letting go. Not of love, but of the weight you were never meant to carry. She has arrived at that moment, and it isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, sacred. a breath of truth that says you no longer have to try so hard. You no longer have to hold up a crumbling connection on your own. You no longer have to stretch your soul to meet someone who won't even reach for your hand. This is not about blaming him. It's not about who was right or wrong. It's about what is hers to hold, and what never was. His pain was never her responsibility to heal. His avoidance was never a cue for her to pause her life. His silence was never a sign for her to wait in spiritual limbo, praying that one day he would choose to awaken. She now sees that she was never meant to dim her light in hopes that it might lead him home. That's not love. That's self-abandonment disguised as devotion. And this clarity, it doesn't scream. It doesn't rage. Bitterness seeks someone to punish. But clarity simply breathes. It exhales the tension. It grounds her back into her body, into her knowing, into the sacred soil of her soul. She's not shutting love out. She still believes in love deeply, fiercely, eternally. She's just no longer willing to stay in a place where love is always almost, always just out of reach, always pending someone else's readiness. This is her moment, not of ending, but of returning to herself. And in that return, she finally remembers, love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Love doesn't have to wait to be worthy. And when love is true, it shows up. Not someday, but now. Number 3, reclaiming the sacred self. The divine feminine is not walking away in anger. She is not turning her back on love, nor is she abandoning the one she once held so close. What she is doing, softly, powerfully, is reclaiming herself. For too long, she poured from a cup already cracked, offering her last reserves of peace to someone who was never ready to receive it. She stayed in devotion, not because she lacked strength, but because her heart believed in transformation. She believed in his potential, in his light, in their sacred promise. But belief without reciprocity becomes depletion. And she has finally realized that her soul was never meant to be a sacrificial altar. She no longer starves emotionally while feeding the needs of a love that demands her silence. She no longer builds spiritual temples for someone who walks barefoot across the sacred ground as if it holds no meaning. She no longer lowers her frequency just to remain accessible to a heart that refuses to awaken. Her empathy is no longer a permission slip for neglect. Her love is no longer a lifeline for someone unwilling to rise. It's important to understand. Her hope was never the flaw. Her patience was not her weakness. The divine feminine embodies these qualities as sacred virtues, but making herself small, invisible, and endlessly forgiving to keep space for someone who never truly stepped in, that was not love. That was self-denial. And that chapter has now closed. She is not walking away to teach him a lesson. She is walking away to remember her own. This isn't rejection. It's reclamation. It's the moment she stops saving him and starts saving herself. Not from his choices, but from the version of herself who once thought that waiting endlessly was an act of love. She is not turning away from the connection. She is turning toward herself, toward the sacred, toward wholeness. Now, she holds space not for his potential, but for her truth. She honors her frequency. She protects her essence. And in doing so, she doesn't end love. She transforms it. She elevates it. Because the deepest form of love is not in holding on, but in letting go when holding on means losing yourself. And she, at last, is choosing to be found. Imagine a woman who spends years tending a garden that never blooms. Every morning, she rises early to water the soil, pull the weeds, and whisper words of encouragement into the wind. She believes with all her heart that if she just loves it enough, if she gives more of herself, it will one day blossom. But season after season, nothing grows. Not because she lacked devotion, but because the seeds she planted were never met with sunlight. Still, she keeps showing up, even as her hands grow tired and her spirit bends beneath the weight of hope deferred. Then one morning, something shifts. She realizes it's not the garden that is broken. It's that she was never meant to plant her light in barren ground. And so, with tears of truth and a quiet heart, she gathers her tools and walks away. Not in anger, but in love, for herself. She finds new soil, rich and alive, and this time, when she plants, something beautiful finally blooms. This is what it means to reclaim the sacred self, to stop trying to thrive where your soul is not seen, and to choose instead the ground that reflects your worth. Number 4, letting go to rise. She still honors the connection. She doesn't deny the soul-deep truth of what they shared. The energy between them was not imagined. It was real, sacred, and unforgettable. But honoring it no longer means holding herself back. She no longer waits in the shadows of what could be, hoping he will one day rise to meet her on the same frequency. Perhaps that day will come. Perhaps he will awaken, ascend, and remember. But even if he does, it will no longer be the reason she stays still. She will not dim her brilliance or hold her breath for alignment that never arrives. What she once called divine timing, she now sees more clearly as divine delay, a painful postponement disguised in spiritual hope. She no longer dresses avoidance in the robes of alignment or calls emotional distance a sacred test. She no longer romanticizes spiritual codependence and confuses it with unconditional love. Because real love, true, soul-anchored, God-aligned love, never demands self-abandonment. Not even from the one who mirrors her essence. Not even from the one who may carry the other half of her soul. There was a time when she believed her role was to hold the light for him, to stay open, to stay waiting, to remain faithful to the bond, no matter how long the silence stretched. But the deeper she journeyed within, the more she realized that the one she had been waiting for wasn't him. It was herself. The version of her that no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. The version of her that rises not because she is hurt, but because she finally remembers who she is. Now she rises, not in rebellion, not in bitterness, not to prove anything to him or the world, but in remembrance of her wholeness, her divinity, and her sovereignty. Her letting go is not an act of rejection, but of sacred reclamation. She doesn't sever the bond with hatred, she releases it with love. She carries the memory, but no longer the weight. And as she ascends into her light, she trusts that whatever is meant to meet her there will. And if he ever does, he will find her not waiting, but already home within herself. Number 5, releasing the illusion. She gave her all. Not just time, but the invisible offerings, prayers whispered into the silence, years spent holding space, and quiet hopes tucked between unanswered messages and delayed promises. She stood steady, believing her love was medicine, that her stillness was faith, that her waiting was divine. But now, something inside her is shifting. The same silence that once felt sacred now feels suffocating. The prayers she offered outward, she is now offering inward. She no longer gives endlessly to someone who cannot receive. She gives to herself everything she once withheld: time, truth, movement, and momentum. She no longer makes herself the container for his healing journey. She no longer positions herself as the silent force behind his awakening, quietly rooting for his growth while pausing her own. She is done whispering, "He'll get there," as a way to stay tethered to a dream that delays her evolution. Instead, she gently asks, "Am I afraid to move on?" And in the asking, she uncovers a deeper truth, not of resentment, but of return. She returns to herself. This is not about abandoning love. It's about reclaiming it. She calls back her energy from all the places it was left lingering, from the texts left unread, the visions of a future that never materialized, the stories she wrote in her heart but could never live in reality. Her reclamation is not laced with rage. It doesn't need a storm. It is rooted in realignment. In choosing herself, she's not closing a door with bitterness, but walking through one with clarity. She now understands that being a lighthouse for someone who never intended to reach the shore only dims her light. Love should not be an endless beacon for a traveler who refuses to land. Instead, she chooses to become a home for her own soul, a place of warmth, truth, and safety that no longer waits for external arrival to feel whole. Her energy is sacred, and now it belongs to her again. This isn't about proving that she can let go. It's about no longer needing to hold on, because the illusion has faded, and in its place, something far more powerful rises: her freedom. If you've made it this far, it means your soul is resonating with the truth of this journey. Take a deep breath. You are not alone in this path of remembrance and release. So many of us have poured into illusions disguised as love, only to find the greatest healing in coming home to ourselves. We'd love to hear your story. What part of this message spoke to you the most? Share your reflections in the comments below, or simply type, "I am coming home to myself," as a powerful affirmation of your return. Your voice matters. Your journey inspires. Let's rise together. Number 6. The divine shift, a return to sovereignty. She radiates now, not to be seen, not to be chosen, but because her essence is finally lit from within. Her glow is no longer an invitation, it is an embodiment. She no longer defines herself through the ache of love withheld, but through the power she discovered in its aftermath. That heartbreak was never the ending. It was the unraveling that led her to herself. She has outgrown the need for validation. No apology can complete what was never broken. She doesn't need to prove her love, nor wait for someone else to name it sacred. Her journey has shown her that real love was never about being seen by him. It was about seeing herself, fully and completely. Her path was never lacking. It was never missing a piece. The truth is, she simply hadn't yet walked deep enough into her own soul to witness the magnitude of her light. But now, she has. She is no longer chasing signs. She has become one. She is the mirror, the message, the miracle she once prayed for. Her very being speaks the language of remembrance. And in her graceful absence, something stirs, an undeniable void, an echo in the heart of the one who once held her in uncertainty. That void is not a punishment. It is a sacred silence, a space that beckons him to rise. Now, it is no longer about her waiting or proving. It is about him answering his own call. The divine masculine must awaken, not to rescue or to win her back, but to finally meet himself in the mirror of his own soul. If they are meant to cross paths again, it will not be as halves looking to be whole. It will be as sovereign beings, each rooted in their own light, each walking their own truth. Not as savior and seeker, but as sacred equals. And if destiny deems it so, they will find one another again, not to complete, but to expand. The journey from longing to living is not marked by the absence of love, but by the presence of self. The divine feminine no longer waits in the shadows of potential or in the silence of someone else's uncertainty. She rises not in defiance, but in deep remembrance of who she truly is. Every step she now takes is rooted in clarity, not confusion, in devotion to her soul, not dependence on another's recognition. She is not hardened by pain, but refined by truth, not colder, but more radiant with discernment. Her glow is no longer a silent plea, but a sovereign light that speaks, "I am whole now." She no longer asks to be chosen. She chooses, with strength, with grace, with full embodiment. The promise she fulfills isn't tied to the hope of reunion, but to the sacred vow her soul whispered long before any separation ever began. You will remember yourself. You will return home. And now she has. This is not the end of love. It is the liberation of it. A love that no longer waits, begs, or breaks. A love that flows from within, rooted in wholeness, not need. When she chooses herself, she doesn't close the door on love. She simply refuses to abandon herself in its name. And that, beloved, changes everything. If this message resonates with you, declare it in the comments. I choose myself, and that changes everything. And if your soul felt seen in this message, help it reach others. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay tuned by watching the next video below. Your journey isn't ending, it's just beginning from within.